Let's go to some business news now, and joining us live is Yellow Brick Road Home Loans Executive Chairman Mark Bouris. Got to get that right, Mark. Good morning to you. Thanks for your time this morning. There's a bit to discuss here, but first of all, this is really interesting what's going on here. You're taking this moment to seize on unhappy bank clients, picking them up while they're being discarded by the big four, the major banks. How are you doing that in this climate? How are you able to afford that while everyone else is closing down branches?
Well, it's a good question, Peter. The main thing from our point of view is that we run a franchise system throughout Australia. So we share the cost with our franchisees in opening up branches across the country. So, and you're right, the big banks are closing down their reportedly 300 bank branches across Australia. From my point of view, from Yellow Brick Road Home Loans point of view, we're intending to open up 100 across Australia. So we've already got 100 plus branches across Australia now, and we want to add another 100 over the next 18 months. Now, it's really important. It's really important for the following reason. It's complex and it's complicated to get a home loan approved. Everybody thinks you've got to go digital. Sure, look for us digitally, find us online. But at the end of the day, the best person to process your home loan is a mortgage broker sitting in one of our Yellow Brick Road Home Loan branches, because they know who will lend you the money, they understand your circumstances, and they get the deal done quickly.
There's new stats, Mark, that have come out this morning that I note from the Australian Banking Association. It's reporting that there have been 15,000 loan deferrals since July 8. 75% of those have been in New South Wales. Is that a pretty good indication of the trouble that a lot of people are feeling at the moment?
100%. We are right now, obviously we're in a bit of a crisis right now. And in terms of getting a loan deferred, and everybody should listen to this, and they should understand this, that there is always relief available. Doesn't matter what the circumstances are, pre-COVID, post-COVID, during COVID, there's always relief available for the 3-month period for everybody who has a home loan, who have a mortgage, and you have to apply to your lender and obviously show cause. But right now we're getting a lot of applications, not so much our organisation, but I know a lot of the banks are getting applications right now for deferral because people aren't getting paid their wages, and or their business has been closed down, or there's no traffic going past their business. Look, I'm right here in the city at the moment. There's no one been here for weeks. I've been coming to the city to my office here across the road for 5 weeks. The place is absolutely dead over the last 3 weeks. So if you're a cafe or a restaurant or whatever it is at the moment, you're getting no foot traffic. You have to apply for relief for your mortgage.
A few weeks ago, we spoke to you, Mark, and half the country was in lockdown. Well, here we are again. We've got some 15 million Australians who are back in lockdown again, following the news from Victoria yesterday. What's your view of where things are at right now?
Well, we're in a very difficult position right now. We're at a crossroads. I mean, this is a lot worse than it was this time last year. So for me, we've got a big issue when it comes to landlords. Because landlords are demanding their rent, and the reason the landlords are demanding their rent is because the bank that they borrowed their money from is also demanding their interest payments. A lot of the infrastructure around this crisis to deal with this crisis, manage this crisis, that was put in place this time last year, does not exist now. And we've got to go back to where we were when the federal government announced a whole lot of initiatives this time last year around landlords and bankruptcy, etc. And we've got to put those things back in place right now so the place can at least be managed. We really have a problem right now. We don't have the same coordinated effort, as far as I can see, as we did this time last year, between both federal and state at every level. So, I guess, and I think the reason, to be fair to everybody, fair to governments, the reason for that is because they never expected to just have these long periods of lockdowns. I think they just thought there's spot fires or put them out, short-term lockdowns. But now that we've got in this extended period, we need to get back to where we were a year ago and start to manage the whole economy. Landlords, ATOs need to be managed, our creditors need to be managed, there needs to be greater contribution made to these small businesses that are all now suffering from the governments. And it's got to be easy to get the money. You can't be putting your application in today and then have to go on hold for 3 or 4 hours trying to work out why hasn't my money been paid to me.
Well,
and there's a lot of that going on at the moment.
Yeah, and that's another good point that you make, Mark. A lot of businesses, they're putting in these applications and they're just not getting that money from the New South Wales government through the service apps. And they're taking weeks to be able to get paid that money.
Well, and the reason for that, Peter, is that's because the state governments are not as well equipped as the federal government was making the payments this time last year. And the federal government was making it through the ATO. And the ATO has unbelievably good IT systems and processes in order to make those payments quickly. This time round, it's up to state governments to make those payments and process those payments to make sure they're not getting rorted, etc.
Yeah.
And in the assessment process, it's taking forever. That's a problem. It's a real problem. And I wonder whether the federal government should just take over this stuff.
Do you believe that vaccines should be mandated in the workplace, Mark?
It's a difficult one. But like if I'm an individual proprietor and my whole livelihood and the livelihood of all my staff relies upon whether or not my people are vaccinated in the organisation, the question, it's the old Adam Smith argument, the greater good for the greater number. So, do I make that decision for the greater number? So in other words, do I sit down and say, because I've got 100 employees, I can't risk 98 of them losing their business and their incomes, and I can't risk all my customers and all my contractors that supply me being affected just because of 2 people. So do I make that big policy decision within my business to protect the greater good of everybody, just in terms of numbers, if I'm a single proprietor? But then you start to bleed that into government agencies, listed public companies, banks. That decision-making becomes much more difficult for those people making the decision because it's not necessarily their business. It might be a business that belongs to 10,000 shareholders or 100,000 shareholders or 1 million shareholders. It's getting very, very difficult, and someone needs to sit down. Government, let's come back to government. Government needs to start to work out policies around this sort of stuff and guidance around these sorts of things for people to make these so-called moral decisions. And they're becoming ethical and moral decisions, and it's a dilemma. And we need guidance, and at least we need debate and consultation for that guidance to become something that becomes a platform for everybody to abide by, or at least look towards when it comes to making those decisions. I know what it is in my business. My business is a publicly listed company. So in relation to a publicly listed company, I have to think about what are my shareholders, who are all my stakeholders, and how would all of those people want me to make that decision? I can't make that decision unless I have some consultation with them, for that matter. But if I was looking at my own privately listed business, my own private companies where I own 100% of it, I'll be making a decision. My decision is more likely to be around protecting the broader numbers of my organisation, everyone.
Okay. Yellow Brick Road Home Loans Executive Chairman Mark Bouris, appreciate your time again. Thanks for joining us here. Talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Peter.